The topic that we have this morning is faith is the gift from God. Faith is the gift of God. Faith is important to our Christian life. Hebrew chapter 11 verse 6 says, without faith, it is impossible to please God. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. So if you look at Jesus' ministry, Jesus was well pleased when faith is in action. But when doubt is expressed, when they showed their disbelief, there Jesus was upset. So you see this both in Jesus' ministry. He was well pleased when faith is expressed. The questions that we have is, where do we receive this faith? How do we make this faith grow? Now, when we turn to our gospel reading, we have been discussing from Mark Gospel. Of course, in between we went to John and we have come back to Mark Gospel. Jesus fed 5,000 people by blessing 5 loaves and 2 fish. This is a widely known miracle. Many people witnessed this. But that miracle did not bring the desired results. People kept on coming back to him to receive further food, further blessings, but that should have resulted in believing in Jesus, in following Jesus. That's not happening. Even in our discussion last week, Pharisees and scribes came from Jerusalem, all the way from Jerusalem to Galilee to check with Jesus. They considered themselves religious police officers. They wanted to check whether Jesus and his followers, Jesus' disciples, are following the commandments which is set in the Bible. Even they wanted to check whether the traditions are being followed. So they were religious police officers, wanted to check, but they don't want to learn anything from Jesus. They were asking questions which were totally not necessary. Should we wash our hands before we eat? And your disciples are not washing their hands before eating. That's a way they are defiling the law that is given to them. So several things. So these miracles of Jesus have not really turned people towards him. But in Mark chapter 7, Mark clearly stated one particular statement, which is Jesus declared that all food clean, all foods clean. That's what Jesus declared. That means Jesus is not going to make a difference between this food and that food. All food clean. Which is also the idea brings forth is that all people are acceptable to God. He is not making any difference between this group and that group. All are good. All people are welcome. Since Jesus is not finding overwhelming response from his own people in Galilee, since there are opposition coming here and there, since people are not taking the message correctly, Jesus is now moving out of Galilee to Tyre. It's a Gentile territory, and Jesus is deliberately taking this step to go to Galilee. To Tyre and Sidon, which are now part of Lebanon. A deliberate attempt. That's what Mark says here. Jesus set out and went away to the region of Tyre. Now he is going to Gentile area. Disciples are not happy with that at all, because those areas, those regions are unclean regions. If you go there, you defile yourself. And they had a bad history from that region. Jezebel, the wife of King Ahab of Israel, brought pagan worship to Israel. She defiled the entire nation of Israel. So nobody wanted to go there, but Jesus take a deliberate attempt to go there. There, Jesus did 2 miracles, one at Tyre, one at Sidon. So we will look at those two miracles. But these two miracles have got some peculiarities. This is not the way Jesus normally healed people. In the first miracle, Jesus healed the daughter of a Canaanite woman who was possessed with the unclean spirit. It was a peculiar way Jesus handled this. This woman, Syrophoenician woman, a Gentile woman, came to Jesus. Jesus had a conversation with her. Normally, when people come to Jesus asking him to heal, he immediately heals. A leper came to Jesus saying that, Lord, if it is your will, you can make me clean. Immediately, Jesus touched him and made him all right, made him, healed him. But here in this case, Jesus is conversing with her. Not only that, Jesus is talking to her rudely. It appeared that Jesus is reluctant to help her. So that's some peculiarity we see in this miracle. In the second miracle, where Jesus healed a deaf and dumb man, there Jesus did some more things. He put his fingers into his ears. He spat, touched his spit and put it in his tongue, touching it on his finger and put it on his tongue. And then Jesus looked up and said, Ephatha. I don't think we see this common with Jesus' miracles. So why these things? That's what we will discuss today. Now, let's look at the Canaanite woman. The Canaanite woman, when she came to Jesus, she already had the knowledge of Jesus. If you look at the similar passage in Matthew chapter 15, there she says, have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. She says, Son of David. That means she already gathered enough information about Jesus. She knew about Jesus. And also, she knew that her help can come only from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Her issue is so peculiar, which cannot be handled by anyone, that can be handled only by Jesus, only by the Lord. That she knew. The another important thing that she knew is that God is merciful. His mercy endures forever. When we approach him, he will certainly grant me his mercy. With these three things, she came to Jesus. That's the reason when Jesus discouraged her, when Jesus talked to her in a rude way, she still hung on because she knew that her help is coming from Jesus. Now, some scholars are of the opinion that Jesus was reluctant. He was also he was like one of his disciples who were unwilling to help the Gentiles. Jesus was taught by the woman that great faith is available among the Gentiles. That some scholars are of the opinion Jesus was taught by the woman. But I disagree with that because Jesus knows everything. There is nothing that he cannot know. There is nothing that is unknown. He knows everything. One day, a rich man came to Jesus and said, Lord, if I have to obtain eternal life, what should I do? Jesus said, all the commandments. But he said, I have followed all these commandments all through my life. Jesus knew his problem and he said, go sell all your possessions, give to the poor and come and follow me. He knew what was going on in his life and therefore he could say that. Jesus walked to Jericho and he saw Zacchaeus on the tree. He knew that somebody was waiting for him. So let us not assume that Jesus was unaware of this woman. Jesus knew the depth of her faith and Jesus wanted to bring out that depth. That's the reason the conversation is going on for some time. One particular scholar said Jesus played as a devil's advocate, to provoke and bring out the best in her. Yes, faith is even available among the Gentiles. This is precisely the reason Jesus said in Luke chapter 10, verse 13, very quickly I want to read you, "Woe to you, Chorazin! Woe to you, Bethsaida! For if the miracles performed in you had been done in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long back." Many miracles have been performed in Galilee. You are not responding. But look, if these miracles were performed in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented. They would have become followers of God very quickly. Now the question comes, where did this woman receive this faith? How did she receive? How did she receive? Probably she received by hearing, and that faith worked in her, and she brought it in action. Faith is the gift of God. Someone said like this, faith is like a breath. When someone is gasping for breath, when somebody is about to die, you give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. That's how faith is given to us. We were dead. We did not have life in us, but God put this faith into us. How did we receive it? By hearing God's message. God miraculously took me to some meetings. Miraculously, I came to know Jesus. That's how I received the faith. But the question is, you receive the faith. Does this faith make any change in your life? Are you a person of little faith, like disciples, or are you like this woman whose faith is great? Are you a person of great faith? Are you a person of little faith? The little faith means you don't do anything with the faith that you received from the Lord. The great faith means you put everything in action. George Muller, when he started his orphanage, he had only 2 shillings, But he started this orphanage, and he received more than $7 million, and he raised many, many orphanages. And the interesting thing about his ministry is that he never went and asked people donations. They would only pray, and they received it. And if you look at his ministry was always debt-free, always debt-free. Are you a man or a woman of great faith? Now, let's move to the second miracle that we see in this passage. Jesus now moved to another city, Sidon. There he healed a deaf and dumb man or deaf man. Now, as I said earlier, Jesus did something differently here. Scholars raise some questions. Why did he do all that? He touched his ears, he touched his tongue, looked up and said, "Ephphatha." He used his saliva as well. On 3 different miracles, Jesus did that. He once made a mud out of his saliva and applied on a blind man's eyes and said, "Go and wash at Siloam," and there his eyes opened. On another occasion, born blind man, he spit on his eyes, touched him, and his eyes opened. And in this case, again, he used his saliva. So some people are coming with the understanding that Jesus used his saliva, which has got all medicinal effect, healing effect. I really do not know. No one can say for sure that these are all the reasons why Jesus used these methods. No one can say that. Even some says that these miracles are beyond his limit, therefore he is trying very hard to see that this healing takes place. No one can say why Jesus had done this. Probably Jesus has done this because these people whom he healed, the blind men and the deaf man, because they had already some impediments. They could not see Jesus, or they could not hear Jesus. Probably that's the reason he did all that he did in these miracles. We really do not know. But Mark is putting this here for a purpose. What is that purpose? He says, you have been listening, but you are not hearing. You have been having the word of hope, word of faith, but you are not exercising. Now, Jesus is here. Allow him to touch your ears, allow him to touch your tongue so that you can hear the right thing and that you can exercise through your words the faith. In Mark Gospel, Jesus scolded his disciples. He scolded like this, are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes and fail to see? Do you have ears and fail to hear? Jesus in Mark's Gospel also said that the parable of the sower, that let anyone with ears to hear listen. These people, the disciples, and his own people have got the problem of listening and also executing. They don't listen correctly, and therefore they are not having the faith in them. So Jesus is now available to touch our ears, touch our tongues to make it open. I just want to finish with this. Again, this is a faith mission. Hudson Taylor, who started his mission called China Inland Mission, a very clear purpose. He said that we are not going to work in the periphery. We will go inside the country to work. That's the reason China Inland Mission, then several inland mission came into being. He was the first one to start inland mission. Not only that, he is the first one who started faith mission. That means he will not ask anyone financial support, but he will go on doing the work, the money would come. If you look at his ministry, during his 51 years of service, 20 mission stations he established, around 848 missionaries he brought outside to China. And his ministry was always filled with people. Now, because he put his faith in action, he came up with a beautiful understanding, beautiful finding. And that finding is this: God's work done in God's way does not lack God's supply. Beautiful finding. What about our faith? We all received faith. Are we still considered people of little faith? Or are we moving to be called people of great faith? May the dear Lord help us so that we put our faith in God in action. God bless us all. Amen.